This is a referendum on Trump's performance as a president, and there wasn't the bodies of I keep bringing this up, but there's 225,000 people that have died in America, and that is unacceptable. So I think the electorate is making that very well known.
It's a COVID election, but I think that it's the massive cherry on top. I think he's going to be saying that this is what made this unfair. No president ever had to deal with a situation like this. But my view on it is simple. You take that job on and you hope there won't be a hurricane. You hope there won't be a pandemic. You hope there won't be a 9/11. But you have to take the job knowing that you may have to protect Americans from some horrendous things.
Well, the thing with the COVID response is that there is no excuse with the way that he's handled it. I mean, there was literally a playbook that he was handed when he came into office, and he has been on a mission to reduce the amount of people that are employed at the CDC. So everything that he has systematically done has led him to this point. So he's not the only president that has had to have dealt with a pandemic. There was a pandemic 100 years ago, so he's not the only one. But his response to this pandemic is the reason why I mean, there was no. I mean, in any other rational person would say, okay, the scientists should be the one that are determining what the policy should be, not the politics determining what the science should say.
Joe Biden emerges from the voting station having cast an early ballot, joining his opponent Donald Trump, who voted in Florida last week. They're not the only ones. 6 days out from Election Day, a record 70 million Americans have cast their votes early, amounting to half the total number of ballots recorded in 2016. Biden chose to stay in his hometown, holding a meeting with health professionals to discuss the ongoing pandemic.
Almost the entire nation is worsening at this point.
Shaking his head at what he heard, and afterwards lashing out at a president he contends has given up trying to contain the pandemic.
It seems like he just doesn't care much about it. And the longer he's in charge, the more reckless he gets. It's enough. It's time to change.
Reports emerging during the day indicate that President Trump and his advisors were seeking political capital out of the pandemic as far back as April. In a recorded interview with journalist Bob Woodward, Jared Kushner reveals that his father-in-law, in his words, was getting the country back from the doctors. Kushner was referring to Donald Trump's insistence on ending the lockdown as soon as possible. He was tweeting support for anti-lockdown protests at a time that Americans were dying at the rate of some 2,000 a day. Kushner says he and Trump focused on what would help the president on Election Day. By their calculations, he contended, Trump would be seen as the open-up president, which would give him a boost in the polls. And on the campaign trail, President Trump continues to insist there's too much focus on the coronavirus and rails against the mitigating measures health experts insist on.
Under Biden's cruel and senseless lockdowns, countless Americans will die from suicide, drug overdose, deferred medical care, alcoholism. We got to open up Pennsylvania. We got to open up North Carolina. Got to open up California. Got to open up New York.
The pandemic has dominated this election process like no other subject, and ultimately this vote may well turn into a referendum on how well or how badly the sitting president has responded.
But we're getting a similar situation here, but it's not quite as politicised. But the second lockdown that's starting in 2 days has not been as universally accepted, and the right wing has put pressure on not to do a lockdown again. And it's economic forces putting pressure on the politicians, and they've got to hold the nerve. And it seems to me that Donald Trump, it's the stock market all the way.
But the stock market isn't. The stock market is only. It doesn't represent what the entire economy is. You know, the stock market. People that own stocks are, I think, something like 17% of the population. Yeah. So the stock market is not the economy. Yeah. So I'm wondering actually if the pushback in the UK for a second lockdown is because, you know, they're seeing what is happening in the United States and the way that Donald Trump is handling this pandemic. We're saying that, you know, if we want this economy to open back up, then we need to, if we want this economy to be successful, then we need to open it back up, regardless of the fact that we are in the middle of the deadliest pandemic in the past 100 years.
That is it. I mean, normal people don't think of just the stock market. It's just that all he seemed to talk about for a while was the Dow Jones, which is insane. And he kept quoting that the figure of the Dow Jones index had got to the highest level that it ever had, and then it collapsed, and that's the problem. And then he had other pressures, but here it is just about business, and you've had a lot of people from various industries pressuring the Conservative government, saying, please don't lock our industry down, like the hospitality industry, that please don't shut us, but keep essentials open and keep us open. It's just so weird because it's such a serious situation that business shouldn't be involved, in my opinion. And it shouldn't. And what there should be, instead of, I think that people would be less adverse to shutting things down if there was some type of social safety net. Yeah. So in the United States, there was a package that was passed for, you know, to help out Americans, but it was a single $1,200 check. Yeah. So I guess $1,200 would be about maybe 700 pounds. Yeah. And that was the only stimulus that we got. Yeah. So you can shut down businesses, but as long as you are giving, you're giving money, if you're putting money in people's pockets, then they don't have to work, and then they don't have to put themselves at risk. But the problem is that if you are looking at the stock market as your metric of how good your economy is doing, then that means you're only looking at a very small percentage of people that are actually making money, when the rest of the people are literally struggling to figure out where they're going to, if they're deciding on whether or not they should put food on their table or if they should pay rent. That's what it's come down to here. Yeah. Because we haven't had any type of second stimulus. You know, here in America, they put a Supreme Court judge on the bench before they pass a second stimulus. Oh yeah. And a second Supreme Court judge does nothing for people that can't pay their rent. That does nothing for us. Well, it was an election winner, wasn't it? And that was why that happened. And also the attack that will definitely happen on Obamacare, which is insane, to do anything that would interrupt healthcare at a time like this. And then you've got the added women's rights issues that are going to be, I'm just saying, a record isn't fantastic when it comes to keeping Roe v. Wade. You know.
Yeah, it's a scary time for people that look like me.
Yeah, that's not good.
Yeah.
People that look like me. Do you mean cool?
Yes.
Yeah.
No, but I mean, I may look cool, you know, and I may be well spoken, but you know, in this country, as a woman of color, as a non-heteronormative woman, as you know, as a Black woman, then it's been an all-out assault on all of our rights. So, and I think that people need to realize that attack on rights anywhere is an attack on rights everywhere. So it doesn't matter if you're not part of a marginalized group. Eventually, you will be marginalized if rights continue to be diminished. Unfortunately, that's the slide into fascism that we're worried about.
Thank you for watching. I'm impressed. You've passed the IQ test and got this far, so let's press that button. Let's do the last thing that helps us. It's got subscribe on it, you can't miss it, and please ring the bell for notifications of future videos.